A woman accustomed to getting her material wants, on her way to a remote Scottish highland, where she's set to be married to a wealthy man, gets held back by the weather on the last leg of her journey, where she's confronted with doubts about her decision. That's the setup for the 1945 dramatic romance, I Know Where I'm Going. And it's the film we're dusting off this week on Movie Bones.
Do you, John Webster, take Consolidated Chemical Industries to be your lawful wedded husband?
I do.
And do you, Consolidated Chemical Industries, take John Webster to be your lawful wedded wife?
And I gotta admit, that got me laughing pretty good, that part. It makes me want to see someone make a sketch like on Saturday Night Live or something of people making vows to non-corporeal entities. Like, do you, Jeff Bezos, take Amazon.com Incorporated to be your lawfully wedded distributor or some such like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Which is kind of funny since that's been over the past 4 or 5 weeks. That's Jeff Bezos and his relationship to the Washington Post has been in a news cycle. But we're not getting into that, obviously.
No.
But you're right. It is exactly that. And that was I will admit, that was a funny little part of the movie.
It was.
And it's because it shows where her head at the time and where her head is at for most of the movie. But let's get into that.
Sure. The story involves Joan Webster, played by Wendy Hiller, who's always willing to sacrifice the bird in the hand for two in the bush, as the saying goes. That kind of translates to her eventually getting engaged to a rich industrialist who, by the way, is also as old as her own father. She sets out to the chosen site of the wedding. Just one small boat trip from her destination, however, and the weather turns foul. And it stays foul to make sure she stays put so she can fall for the new guy. And maybe that's where I'd like to start, because that sucked out a lot of any potential enjoyment I could have hoped to get from it. It's not the only thing, but it just kind of takes all the agency out of her. You know, it's just the weather, really. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I don't know if you've thought about this. If you've not thought about this, you might actually facepalm yourself right now. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're not really thinking about something, but you're asleep in your bed, and then all of a sudden you don't just bolt awake, but you just kind of sit up and you go, and you somehow your brain has decided to put two and two together. Yeah, you figure something out. And you're going, oh, this makes so much more sense now. Now that I look at it in this way, this movie wasn't super confusing for me. I want to make that very clear. You're not going to watch this movie and go and make yourself feel like you've watched something it's not a think piece of any types. And it's a movie where you can halfway shut your brain off if you want to. And that could be a good or a bad thing, depending on how you feel about that kind of thing. But I will tell you what this movie is. At its core, what this movie is. And this is what made me. I was actually with some friends. We were going to go see a football game the next day. And I was not thinking about this movie. But I woke up halfway through the night. And I went, oh my word. In my brain. I wasn't talking out loud. But I went, oh my word. This is a Hallmark movie. If there ever was one. Because that is what a Hallmark movie is.
Yes.
It is a woman who is either career orientated or, goal orientated in some way, who is oftentimes either engaged to or married to or, in a relationship with some, rich guy from the city.
Yeah.
And she winds up in a small town where she falls in love with the small town boy who has a past of sorts. And he shows her what it's like to live in a small town.
And you know what? You are absolutely 100% correct. And you're right. I am smacking myself and I am head desking right now, not thinking of this. I wish I had thought of this myself. You know why, though? Because my wife and I will occasionally, we're masochist folks. Sometimes we can be masochists. We'll look up some Hallmark movies, not because we enjoy them, okay? But because it's like the same thing with Mystery Science Theater, right? It's like you just enjoy watching some things that are just really bad. And Hallmark movies are really bad in a particular way. And I think my wife gets more out of it than I do in this respect. But neither of us saw this when we were watching the movie. And yet when you see it, like you said, you cannot unsee it. You know? It is entirely the Hallmark story.
It is. It 100% is. And like, it's just down to the T. The only thing, in this day and age anyways, the only thing is it had nothing to do with Christmas.
That's true. Yeah. I mean,
because if it did, I can promise you this, he would have either been Santa Claus or he would have been the son of Santa Claus.
I think probably the son of Santa Claus. He wasn't quite old enough to do that. Yeah. But I guess I hear your point. Yeah. Oh, man. What I was going to say about it was like the Deus Ex Machina effect. Usually you see them come in like at the end. But this also does apply to the Hallmark movies too. Is that the Deus Ex Machina, whatever it is, the waylaying of the person off the course they thought they wanted to be on, is always from outside the entire time. Pixar has this rule about their stories, and it's just generally good storytelling too, is that you can use, some piece of chance to get your characters into trouble. But you can't have chance get them out of trouble. In this case, you can't have the only thing driving the course of the plot or the action is the fact that she just can't get to where she's going because she's determined every step of the way. She doesn't really have what I would call much in the way of visible doubt throughout the entirety of the second act, really. She's always trying to just get away, mostly from him. And in all honesty, he's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying because, it does come across as... what are we trying to get at here and everything? In fact, there was a couple confusing parts of this movie to me at the first. If you're not paying attention to it, and again, this is not a think piece at all, but if you're not paying attention to it, when she came onto that island and then they go into that house, that random house that she finds herself in, because it felt really random, that is, and like you have these characters interacting with each other, I thought, well, maybe, like I thought the other adult characters in the movie might be either related or in a relationship themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
I thought that might too.
That comes down to the synopsis of the movie where it talks about where we saw that it's about two people, they're trying to get back to each other. So that could have been playing into that part, like, we're going to introduce her fiance eventually, and they're going to have to, they're trying to work their way back to each other. But then it really quickly for me, I was like, oh, okay, we're not doing that part. It's a love story between these two characters, and we're going to get there by the end at least.
Speaking of those characters that you saw, like you see in the house that she first goes into when she's waylaid, is that there's a girl who's a member of the household, I guess. I can't remember what her name is, but she had this spirit and feistiness to her, and it was like, it's almost like, oh, here's someone that our heroine could maybe perhaps get some good advice from, because she seems like she's also a free spirit, but she also seems grounded in reality, whereas, our heroine at the moment in the beginning is not grounded. And I said, well, okay, well, maybe she's going to act like a foil, someone who can, give her the wisdom that, she's, it seemed like that would be like a great use for her. And they just kind of drop her. And they do bring her back toward the end, but then they kind of ruin her when they did. I noticed it because they kind of deflated whatever character and personality she had.
I like that character a whole lot.
I did too.
That's my favorite character in the movie. And I got to say this. This has happened a couple times when we're watching these older films. I don't know what it is. And I've seen it in men, I've seen it in women. But every now and then we're going to get this person who's an actor or actress and this character that there's this is going to sound strange. There's this uncanniness to it. And the reason why I say it's uncanny is because when you look at that character, they feel out of time. They feel like this person that I'm looking at on screen right now, if you pluck them out of that day and age and put them in this day and age, they wouldn't miss a beat. And I just felt like, I was like, is this a time traveler? Because he just felt like that. the way, because you're in the, what is this? This is the 40s, I think this movie was 40s, set in.
Yeah.
And it's just like you have and we know how women are portrayed on screen in the 40s because oftentimes they're prim and proper, like our main character really is. Mm-hmm. And this character, she just, the way she sits, the way she talks, it's very...
Yeah, she just doesn't care what anyone else thinks.
It's very today, and it's awesome. That makes her character awesome. Mm-hmm. But you're right. The problem is this movie just... it introduces her. She's cool. And then we don't see her really again until like the back half of the movie. And there she's just like, it's kind of like that go get your man kind of thing.
Yeah, and it seems like the opposite kind of message, think she should be making, given what limited things we know about her. When you strip the story back, you've seen it in rom-coms, you've seen it in modern romance movies, and typically the man is going after something, someone that they shouldn't be, and they're seeking love in a wrong place, right? And they're supposed to find love in a new place with a new person by the end of the movie. It's constantly, you see so many of these movies, which, by the way, it's a little side note, folks, I have a big beef with a lot of those movies in that, especially when they have someone getting close to being married and they're turning around by the end of the movie, they're marrying someone else. I always feel like there should be, like, it shouldn't end with them being like engaged with each other or at least in a serious relationship yet. At best, those movies should end with the new couple just on the verge of being like, let's get to know each other better. You know what I mean? I've moved away from this one big decision, but I don't want to just jump into the next one right away. It seems like a bad move. But that's just, okay, that's my digression. The reasons they give, the movie does try to give the audience doubts as to why she shouldn't be marrying this person. And let me just play you some clips of what some of those villagers, think those reasons should be.
My son was after telling me about the rich man on Caloran.
My wife's second cousin, Hector McCodrum, was working up there the entire spring on a swimming pond he was building.
A swimming pool?
Oh, Gunya, what foolishness, and the whole wide open sea to be swimming in.
Aye, and the loch.
He has no care of money, the rich man of Caloran. He brings salmon with him from the mainland, and the water's here full of salmon.
Can he no fish for himself? No, he cannot. He has the finest tackle from Glasgow, but the fish don't know him.
Yes. The fish do not know him.
Ryan, I like a lot of these things could apply to me. I guess I just might not be the marrying kind because I can't fish for the life of myself. And if I was in a place where they weren't providing, already caught salmon, I wouldn't be like, and if I could afford it, as like, I really like salmon, I'd probably have it shipped into me too. And, and also it's like, so he doesn't like going swimming in the Arctic, in the North Atlantic waters. I would have a problem with that too. I would rather swim in a swimming pool if I had my druthers, if you know what I mean. So yeah. I must be a really bad husband. I am not the catch my wife thought I am, apparently. Oh, good grief. We don't know anything really negative about the guy. I mean, yes, she's marrying him for the wrong reasons. He's wealthy. But you would at least think it's like he seems, at least from his part, as a wealthy person, whatever it is, it's like he may be a little clueless, but I don't see him as being necessarily anything, good or bad.
Even though the movie doesn't dive into this, we both know, like, the reason why these two people, I would say, if we look at our world and society today, and even back then, why should these two people not be marrying each other? Well, there's two big reasons. One, she's clearly just marrying him for his money.
Yeah.
And then on his part, he's marrying her for her youth and her beauty and things like that. So they don't really know each other. We can really infer that and everything.
Yeah.
But they probably don't really know each other. They probably, and that's a whole different story. That's a whole different movie. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different issue. And the movie, what it unfortunately does is it doesn't play into that. He's just a piece here to get us to the next part.
And really, I guess my objection to it, isn't so much that you could have gone with that where it's just the problem of not knowing each other well enough. And that would have been reason enough on its own. You're right. That is. But the fact that the movie makes a point of trying to throw these extra dialogues in there, it made me feel very much like, it's like now it matters to the movie that we think negatively of the guy. Whereas before it would have been, like you said, it would have been enough just if they hadn't, just because they didn't know each other.
Because you could have done something like, this is a small village. That's what it is. It's a village town. You could have made it to where she was just trying to get to a city. Like, you could have made this movie, even though, like, I don't know, I'm not looking at a map right now, so my logistics could be off here. Maybe she's trying to get all the way to France.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got to go through Scotland for whatever reason. Or she's trying to like get somewhere else, it's just somewhere that's more vibrant, has more to offer and everything. And it could have been about like her realizing that where she's at is actually good enough for her.
Yeah.
You didn't have to make it about that. And then you didn't have to make it about the relationship between her and this rich guy. Because, I mean, like, the movie does a good job. Like, I really like the very first part of the movie, like that little setup. Like, it's like she always gets what she wants. She's always on the move. She's always looking for something. Like, it basically tells you she's looking for something bigger and better.
Yeah.
And it's like, that didn't have to lead to, even in the 40s, that didn't have to lead to her being married.
There's so much fertile ground to be had today or then in the idea of chasing the wrong things, because it's a basic part of our human nature. And it's so much fertile ground there. You'd think that, by the time you're getting ready to invest in a movie, that you could have someone write there has to be something more interesting than this. There has to be, Now let's turn to the other half of the equation, the guy she's actually supposed to or fated to, because the movie is pretty much on the nose about this is fated to be. The weather is telling you all over the place. The weather was so strongly telling him that it was blowing I didn't know if you noticed this, but the weather was blowing the drapes in her room with the windows closed. That's how strongly the weather was telling her. It was telling her through closed windows that this is fated to be. But there's no chemistry there. He just kind of imposes himself. I don't know what he sees in her that he wants to, first of all, because she's not displaying any characteristic or spirit that I would qualify as attractive. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what kind of guy is just like looking at a woman like that. It's like, yeah, I'm looking for the kind of the gold digger stereotype, That sounds like someone who I want to spend the rest of my life with. I'm going to hit on her and right before her, her wedding too. Just the two of them together just don't feel, there's nothing there between them at all. And especially because she's always repulsed by him.
And that's the Hallmark trope. She's supposed to be repulsed by this guy until she's not, until she realizes like, this is the person I wanted all along. And you don't get that, like, what keeps connecting them. Like, it doesn't really push them over into like they could actually be like a couple right now if we decided to pull that string.
Yeah.
Until they're at that little dance thing and they're standing really close to each other on a ladder.
Yeah. And even then I didn't feel anything. And then they weave in this thing with the curse, you know what I mean? The curse on the guy. Mm-hmm. And they keep you in suspense as to what the curse is until the very end. And it's womp womp. It's related to him falling in love with her and being kind of tied by a ball and chain, so to speak, to a woman. And it's like, wow, first of all. But even beyond that, it's like, it feels like this movie came from like some kind of Scottish fable, or is trying to make it sound like a Scottish fable that's been passed around a few too many times, but not with any ear for storytelling.
Well, it's funny that you should mention that, because when I did some little research on this movie a while, like as I was watching it, I did learn that the developers of this movie had actually tackled a Canterbury Tale and had done a Canterbury Tale movie, and actually they suggested that instead they make a film that was part of the crusade against materialism, a theme they had tackled in A Canterbury Tale.
Okay.
Only in a more accessible romantic comedy format. You do have that fable element to it because the Canterbury Tales are... So, yeah, it's there. It's actually purposefully there. It also feels like a movie that's trying to tell you to go visit Scotland.
It does very much, doesn't it?
Because the scenery is beautiful, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. It had some really good cinematography. That is one of the better qualities I will give it. That, and they did some interesting choices with like something like the credit, even small things like the credit sequence. Mm-hmm. Where they put the credits on actual like building typefaces or gates that close, and the gate closes, and the sign in the gate actually has the cast credits in it. It's like, well, that's actually pretty neat. That had me initially. It's like, well, that's creative. Hopefully the rest of the movie pretends for good things. Not always does that though. Also things like some neat transitions, like there's a guy's top hat and fades into a smokestack for the train.
I gotta say this as well. This is the technology of the time, but it is jarring when someone's behind us or in front of a green screen at times, like when they're on the boat.
I knew you were going to say that.
They're on the boat and like you're watching the green screen behind them and you're like, There's some part of me that's like, how are they still alive? Because the water is going so far above their heads.
You're so right. I was like, I'm getting seasick because I am actually physically getting seasick from watching this scene because I think you overdid it. We know it's rough. I get it. Pull back a bit, okay? I did close my eyes for a bit. Yeah, just listen to it instead of watching it. The performers, the actors were doing decently, but nothing that I would call stand out on their own kind of a thing. And they are completely let down by the story. Actually, that's one thing this movie has that Hallmark movies don't, is that, it actually has some people who are actually acting, trying to act. I could see this being a movie an actor might take kind of as a stepping stone to better work, but it really can't save this from being a face-melting waste of time. And for me, it's just a big old don't look at it. None of the virtues that we've talked about were something I think you necessarily had, you would want to see this, or like for any historical purpose, or, I think you can get all those things better elsewhere. Just don't look at it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. Like, if you really just can't help yourself, and you could maybe give it I could maybe justify a Bad Dates movie, but after the movie was done, I was just thinking to myself, like, that's it. I don't need to see this movie ever again.
I kind of wish I hadn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one character that I really liked is not, is only in the movie for like a handful of moments. And, there's other ways to look at Scotland. Like in this day and age, there's different shows that actually like give you images of that. And there's just a smorgasbord of Hallmark movies or, any other of those channels or stations or streaming services that offer up those type of films, which are, they're objectively better in their own way.
Yeah.
If you just, I think this movie did actually get good reviews when it came out, but like just everything after it was all said and done, I was going, not for me. So I'm going to give it a don't look at it as well.
Yeah. Some things just don't age well, and I don't know what, I just don't know. But if you guys are thinking about when you mentioned other movies set in a similar location and setting, and have you seen Waking Ned Devine by any chance?
I have not.
Okay. It's a movie. I can't remember if it's Scotland or Ireland. So folks, forgive me if I'm going to show my ignorance in the point here, because I do tend to get them mixed up, and I will confess that readily. But it takes place, similar location settings, and it's about a whole town that they all love to play the lottery. And one day, one of them in the village actually wins the lottery, and he dies of shock. And the rest of the village finds out, and then, so they set it up so one of the other villagers pretends to be him, so that they can get the money, and the town can split the money. And it becomes, and it's kind of endearing. There's also a love story as a subplot too that kind of, they tie it in really well with the whole lottery thing, which is like the big overarching driver of events. But they still have this really nice love story in there. So go, folks, if you're interested in a movie that takes place in a similar location with beautiful settings and, the idea of romance and a little bit of humor to boost it as well, Waking Ned Devine. That's a more modern film. It's not going to be within Movie Bone's purview, but there you go, folks. If you haven't seen it already, there's a better movie to watch. So now's the time when we'd like to remind the listening audience out there that if you're watching these movies alongside us, and you should be, and hearing our reactions, please do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us if you think we got it all wrong. Maybe nominate some films you'd like to see us do, especially if they're available for free, because this adventure comes with no strings attached, guaranteed. In any case, Ryan and I thank you for sticking with us on this shared journey. So what's next on our journey, Ryan? Tell the audience.
Speaking of movies that could potentially have like amazing scenery, I actually don't know about this one, but I know about its remake, and its remake had amazing scenery. But we're going to be watching a movie that, yes, again, has a remake to it, a remake that starred Ben Stiller. And it was one of his, I think, passion projects. And so I really like that one. I hope I like this one. But this is a 1947 romantic comedy based on a well-known short story about a daydreamer who dreams get him in trouble. This movie is titled The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, starring Danny Kaye and directed by Norman MacLeod.
Yes. I have read I remember reading this story. It's a short story from, I think I read it in middle school or early high school. I can't remember which, but I think it was a short story based on a short story from, I don't know when it was written, But yeah, we'll see how it is. I'm actually looking forward to this. Danny Kaye usually makes me laugh. I've been trying to find another one of his for Movie Bones called The Court Jester. If anyone knows where to find that for free, I would love to do that one in Movie Bones. So if you guys know of where to find The Court Jester, please do. Let me know. Let us know. That's about it for this week, Ryan. I guess there's nothing much else to say. So until next week, folks, goodbye, and I'll see you next week.
See you next week.